out from our blue heavens, from our deep seas breaking round, over everlasting mountains where the echoing crags resound, from our plains where creaking wagons cut their trails into the earth, calls the spirit of our country, of the land that gave us birth. At thy call, we shall not falter. Firm and steadfast we shall stand. At thy will, to live or perish. O South Africa, dear land.
This is the story of the children of the Southern Cross, who sought new horizons of liberty and fresh lands beyond the oceans. And it is the story of the cross as it brings eternal life and freedom to the people of Africa. Table Mountain is the lofty southern bastion of the African continent. Her people call her the grey old lady of the Cape, but they don't mean it. When her summit glistens with a tablecloth of fleecy clouds or even snow, she is a queen of surpassing beauty. The 15th century Portuguese navigator, Vasco da Gama, called this the fairest cape in all the world. Nestled at the foot of the mountain slopes, green with forests of pine and oak, Cape Town sits serenely on Table Bay, like the gracious and aristocratic old lady that she is. For 300 years, she has been mistress over the shipping lanes to the Orient, and her culture is a rich blend of Holland, France, and England, spiced with a dash of Malay and Hottentot. But beneath Cape Town's proud heritage and mellow traditions throbs the heart of a 20th century commercial giant, ship chandler to the world and nerve center of the Southern Oceans. Van Riebeck, who governed the Cape Colony more than 3 centuries ago, and whose statue looks out over the city he founded, would be surprised at how his little village has grown. He would still recognize the proud head of Table Mountain, but her children have covered her feet with works that would make the good Dutchman gasp and drop his meerschaum pipe. Where once he saw lions strolling in his gardens, the concrete jungle has usurped the throne of king of beasts, and freeways hum with cars where once only footpaths led through forest glades. Lofty houses of commerce stand in sleek salute to modern man, with only here and there a nostalgic glimpse into Cape Town's historic past. There have been members of the Church of Christ in Cape Town since the 19th century, mostly small groups of coloured Christians, with a few whites of British origin. But a flourishing work among the white population has grown up only during the last decade. Of 3 white congregations in the Cape Town area, the largest meets at Rosebank, where Brother Conrad Steyn preaches, and where this place of worship was recently opened. Other white congregations meet at Goodwood and Fishhook, and an assembly of coloured brethren worship in Woodstock. All of the preachers for these churches are South Africans, and are able to preach fluently in both English and Afrikaans, the 2 official languages of the country. As everywhere throughout the world, South Africa's youngsters are the key to the future of the church in this country. And who knows but that behind these eager childish eyes are being moulded the minds of the David Lipscombs and the James McGarveys of the 21st century, or that from these small beginnings may step forth men and women who will change the world. Kingdoms may rise and fall and civilizations totter on the brink of chaos, but as long as our little ones are thrilled by the sweet story of heaven's love and are taught to walk in the way of the cross, then hope and truth and spiritual light shall never perish from this earth. God grant that these and all other such little ones throughout the world may carry the everlasting gospel on their lips and in their hearts, until the last dark habitation of mankind may glow with the bright message of an eternal tomorrow. "400 miles west of Cape Town, along the breathtaking lovely stretch of the African coast called the Garden Route, Port Elizabeth combines sedate English dignity and the traditional warmth of South African hospitality on the shores of Algoa Bay. In the late 15th century, the Portuguese adventurer Bartholomew Dias planted a cross on one of its beaches. But it was only with the arrival of the 1820 settlers from England that Port Elizabeth was born. Main Street is a kaleidoscope of South African life, of traffic jams, double-decker buses and fashionable shops, of meter maids and street corner flower sellers. But most of all, it is people. People who could be your next-door neighbors. And in today's world, they really are. It is kids named Smith and Fourie and van der Merwe, workers waiting for buses, and schoolgirls who will be tomorrow's mothers. The best view of this city of 300,000 people is from the Donkin Reserve, a public park above the port, named for the first British governor of the Eastern Cape, Sir Rufane Donkin. His wife, the Lady Elizabeth, is commemorated in the name of the city itself. The world is full of monuments to the men who have died in fighting for cause or country. But in all the earth, only Port Elizabeth has erected a memorial to the gallant horses who have fallen in wars they could not understand. The Church of the Lord had its beginning in 1952, when John Harden and Eldred Eccles moved to Port Elizabeth from Johannesburg. Its first public meeting place was a lodge hall that often reeked of stale beer and sausage rolls from Saturday night parties. Leonard Gray joined the Port Elizabeth work in 1953, to be followed in later years by Tex Williams and Abe Lincoln. The present congregation is a growing, hard-working group of Christians who have altered and modernized an old building into an attractive place of worship. Brother Joe Watson from Stillwater, Oklahoma, is the evangelist for the Port Elizabeth Church. The Lord's work in this city is a bright spot on the dark continent and holds great promise for the future, and some of the young men of the church are already preaching the gospel wherever they are needed. Chowderville is the colored quarter of Port Elizabeth, where another faithful body of believers assemble. The term colored, as used in Southern Africa, does not mean Negro, but any admixture of races. In these friendly faces are blended the blood of Europeans, African natives, Indians, and Malays. Colored people most commonly speak their own dialect of Afrikaans or South African Dutch. but most of these speak English as well. Brother Andy Euster, a member of the white congregation in Port Elizabeth, has devoted years of love and selfless labor toward building up the colored church while supporting himself as an architect. 200 miles north of Port Elizabeth, and also on the Indian Ocean, lies East London. English immigrants named it for the great sprawling metropolis on the Thames, but a city less like foggy and smoke-begrimed London could hardly be imagined. With its red-roofed white houses splashed against the vivid green of the rolling hills and the royal blue of the ocean, East London has a quiet charm of its own, broken during school vacations by a regular invasion of up-country tourists who pack its hotels and crowd its streets. The Buffalo River on which the city is built provides a safe anchorage for even the giant passenger ships, and the harbour hums with the sound of commerce. East London is the nation's grain-loading port, with the biggest corn silo in the southern hemisphere. A large part of South Africa's 300 million bushel corn crop passes through East London. On a green hill overlooking the sea stands the beautiful new building where the Lord's people in East London meet for worship. The Church of Christ was established in the city in 1952 by Brother Don Gardner, who was followed by Leonard Gray. Leonard and Margaret Gray lived and worked in East London for a number of years, during which time the congregation moved from the converted stable, which was the original meeting house, into this lovely building, which they planned and financed themselves. Brother Ivan Ace, who is South African born, preaches for the congregation. The prospects for the future of the church in East London are excellent. A Zulu rickshaw boy in his exotic plumage introduces us to Durban, South Africa's subtropical winter playground. These prancing human ponies vie with each other for the tourist traffic and for the annual prize of the most outlandish costume. The result is something between the regalia of an African witch doctor and a Cambodian demon. But they don't just pose for photographs. For a few cents, they will quickly run you downtown to shop or along the ocean front. Most of South Africa's 500,000 Indians live in Natal, the province where it is always summer, and of which Durban is the largest city. What the colored people are to the Cape Province, the Indians are to Natal. They feel at home in Durban's humid warmth and riotous tropical vegetation. Mostly they are Tamils and Telugus, brought out to work in Natal's sugar plantations, with a sprinkling of Bombay merchants. They have prospered in South Africa and would never return to India. Hundreds of their little shops are combined in Durban's great Indian market, where the perfume of many fruits mingles with the smells of frying samosas, curry powder and ginger. The whole market area is redolent with the heavy scent of eastern spices, and the air quivers with the babble of many tongues. Inside the market, one can buy camphor wood chests from Hong Kong, carved walnut tea trays from Kashmir, and enameled brassware from Pakistan. If you need an unusual vegetable, some unheard of fruit, or the ingredients for a Turkish palau, then Durban's Indian market is the place to go. Many of the shoppers are natives, with here and there a white local or a group of tourists from one of the luxury liners moored in the harbour. There are a few small congregations of the church among the Indians of Natal, but most of them cling to the Hindu or Muslim religions. Hindu women wear caste marks painted on their foreheads, and their people practice cremation of their dead. Muslims, on the other hand, follow the European custom of burial, only their dead must be buried facing Mecca. Outside Durban, Indians are largely employed in producing and processing sugar cane, for sugar is the big industry of Natal. Many are merchants in the small towns and trading posts. But wherever they live and work, the bright saris of their women lend colour to the African scene, and the aroma of rich spices hangs heavy in the air. During the cold winter months on the high plains of the Transvaal and Orange Free State, those who can flee the frosts of the plateau for the sunny beaches and flowers of Durban. Even though the beachfront has miles of towering hotels, there are never enough, so it is necessary to reserve accommodation as much as 1 year in advance. Durban is much more than a winter playground, however. The harbour is one of the safest in the world, with a large deep-water bay protected by a narrow entrance. During the last war, Allied shipping sought refuge from Hitler's submarines in Durban's hospitable anchorage. Its geographical location and fine facilities are major reasons for its growing importance as a commercial and military port. Durban Harbour is protected on the southern side by a high ridge called simply the Bluff. The Bluff's tip is an important whaling station. The smell of whales being processed draws large numbers of dangerous sharks, so Durban's beaches have to be protected by shark-proof nets. Most of the oil for the interior of South Africa is unloaded and refined at Durban. Then it is sent over the Drakensberg Mountains, the Mountains of the Dragon, by pipeline to Johannesburg, 400 miles away. Durban is about the same size as Cape Town, but the two cities are as different as New Orleans and Louisville, Kentucky. Both are beautiful ladies, but Cape Town has the cool, classic beauty of a Nordic blonde. Durban is a dark-eyed enchantress with a hibiscus stuck in her hair. The Lord's Church came to Durban when John Maples began preaching there in 1956. A strong work was established, and the membership grew to be one of the two largest congregations in the country. It was the first congregation to become fully organized with elders and deacons. The two present buildings, one the auditorium and the other the educational block, will eventually both be used for classes, and a spacious auditorium will be erected in front of them. To the young people of South Africa, the Durban Church is best known for its teenager weekends. Young Christians from all over the Republic stay with Durban families while they hold their own teenagers' lectureship. From the sun-drenched shores of the Indian Ocean, let us now fly over the towering blue mountains of Basutoland until we see below us the broad prairies of the Orange Free State. And rising out of the plains, we see the new city of Welkom. Its name is Afrikaans for welcome, and it is inviting us to visit the fabulous gold fields of South Africa, out of whose mines come 70% of the free world's gold. Welkom is a planned city with wide streets, spacious parks, and modern hospitals and schools. But the story of Welkom is the story of the Queen of Metals, whose dull yellow gleam has, throughout history, drawn some to fame and riches, and others to despair or death. The actual face of the gold-bearing stone, or stope as it is called, is near enough to the Earth's core to be unbearably hot, and only by a gargantuan system of air conditioning are men able to work there at all. The crushed stone which bears the gold passes through an elaborate process of recovery until it reaches the final stage where carbon electrodes separate the pure gold in liquid form. The liquid metal is poured into ingot molds to harden. The finished product is a 25-pound bar of pure gold worth just over $10,000. The population of the Orange Free State is predominantly Afrikaans, and throughout the province, the South African Dutch language is the principal channel of communication. Nevertheless, virtually all the population are bilingual, particularly in the cities, and an English-speaking person has no difficulty in making himself understood. Preachers of the gospel can naturally do more effective work in the Free State if they are fluent in Afrikaans. Brother Joe McKissick was the first to mine for God's spiritual gold in Welkom. Today, the congregation is growing in numbers and zeal under the teaching of Brother Brian van der Spey. He, like most South African-born preachers, is equally fluent in English and Afrikaans, and services in Welkom are conducted in both languages. Across 100 miles of prairie from Welkom, another Free State congregation meets in the city of Bloemfontein. The English translation of the name is Fountain of Flowers, and it is the judicial capital of South Africa. The Church of the Lord in Bloemfontein is relatively young, but already the Brethren have an attractive new building in a growing middle-class suburb, and the future holds much promise for the growth of God's people. At least the Bloemfontein Brethren have assured the next generation of Christians by producing the finest crop of babies in any congregation in the Republic. And if they enjoy raising their voices as much 20 years from now as they do today, South Africa at the end of the century will not lack dynamic preachers. Preaching among the white people of South Africa has a great practical advantage in the fact that the country's economy is strong and living standards are high. Brethren can, and normally do, build their own places of worship, often beautiful buildings that are a credit to the church in the community. Such American niceties as air conditioning and ice water fountains are not necessary in South Africa. Johannesburg is South Africa's fabulous city of gold. In the lifetime of some of you watching this film, Johannesburg was only a nameless stretch of African veldt, where antelope grazed and jackals howled. Its rapid growth to a city of 2.5 million people has earned it the title of the biggest young city in the world. It is a restless giant on the move. Jan Smuts Airport is Johannesburg's gateway to the world, and the international jets arrive in an endless stream from all of the continents of the world. There is none of the quiet leisureliness of the South African way of life about Johannesburg. Its streets roar with impatient traffic, and its sidewalks teem with a jostling, pushing throng from all over the world. Johannesburg has 300 white residential areas, and only in 2, Turpentine and Mondial, are there congregations of the Church of Christ. But Johannesburg is really only the glittering pendant in the center of a chain of cities stretching for 70 miles along the Gold Reef. One of these smaller towns, which grew up around the gold mines, is Benoni, where the Southern Africa Bible School is situated. This Bible school, which exists to train young men of South Africa to proclaim the unsearchable riches of Christ, is under the direction of the elders of the Garland Road Church of Christ in Dallas, Texas. Its immediate supervision is entrusted to a school board of 7 gospel teachers, 4 of them South Africans and 3 Americans. The curriculum for the school is set after consultation with the Garland Road elders and with the preachers and church leaders of Southern Africa. The school was established in the firm belief that it is the ultimate responsibility of South Africans to take the gospel to the people of South Africa, but that to do it most effectively, they need intensive training in God's Word and how to preach it in purity and power. The present teaching staff consists of Al Horn, Eldred Eccles, and John Hardin. A 6.5-acre piece of ground has been bought in Benoni, upon which it is planned to erect simple and practical buildings to meet the needs of the school. At the present time, classes are conducted in an old residence already on the property. The 3-year course of study includes, in addition to studies in the Old and New Testaments, learning to read the scriptures in the original tongues, church history, sermon preparation, and theological studies. By arrangement with the University of South Africa, which is the largest institution in Southern Africa, our students may take the university's examinations and obtain in 3 years a bachelor's degree recognized throughout the world. It is the ultimate goal of the Bible School to graduate 20 students per year, and when the day comes that 20 gospel preachers who know the customs and languages of their people go out into the South African harvest field every year, then the spiritual face of a continent will be changed. The teachers in the Bible school work with local congregations in the Reef area. Brother Al Horn preaches for the church in Benoni. This congregation was established by Brother John Hardin and has become one of the strongest churches in the Republic. They meet in a beautiful building which they converted from an old dairy barn. The horse stable became their educational building. The Benoni Brethren own their own preacher's home, support 2 evangelists to work among the natives, and pay the expenses of one of the students in the Bible school. Elect from every nation but one through all the earth, whether Japanese, American or African, we are all one body, one bread. For we all partake of one bread, and as these Benoni brethren enact an ancient memorial ritual which has bound the disciples to their Saviour for 2,000 years, they join with all other people of God everywhere in showing forth their Lord's death till he comes again. And 7 miles away in the little Boksburg church, the same sacred feast is in progress. The Boksburg church was established in 1965 when a few brethren living in the town but worshipping in Benoni decided to launch out in a new work. They invited the Eldred Eccles family to work with them, and the Benoni church gave them the down payment on a building site as a parting gift. First they met in a home, but within a few months they had constructed this small auditorium in which to worship. It was paid off within 18 months, and now they have plans drawn to build a modern building to seat 250 people with 8 classrooms. They have done this with God's help from their own resources, and they are stronger for having done it themselves. The speaker in the Boksburg pulpit today is Brother Joe Sidera, who operates a service station to support his family, and who spent 1 year in the Bible school. The song leader is Brother Reg Carr, one of the original members of both the Benoni and Boksburg congregations. The Eccles family live in Benoni, near the Bible school, but travel to Boksburg to assist in the teaching program of the church there. Of South Africa's 100 congregations, 86 are among the coloured races, or non-Europeans as they are called. There are several large towns on the reef with half-caste or mulatto populations. A number of able coloured evangelists carry on this work with the assistance of Brother John Hardin. These men work at various professions to support themselves in order to preach the gospel without charge. Sometimes as many as 400 coloured Christians are present when combined services are held in Johannesburg. They hope one day to have their own preacher training school so that they can carry out the Great Commission more fruitfully among their own people. The vast majority of South Africa's population is made up of native or Bantu people of many tribes. There are several Bantu congregations in the great Johannesburg native quarter called Soweto. Soweto is Johannesburg's Harlem, with the difference that it is subdivided into many ethnic groups, speaking their own languages and having different customs. One of the best known evangelists among the Soweto Bantu is Brother Jackson Sagoni, who is the son of a chief and belongs to the Xhosa tribe. The song director for this service is Brother Simon Makwagula, a Swazi who has never lived in Swaziland, and who usually preaches for the Bantu congregation in Benoni. He is supported by the white brethren in Benoni. Like colored people everywhere, Bantu Christians love to sing. And when some favorite hymn is selected, God is praised in a great swelling tide of song. And like brethren around the world, they like to visit outside the building when services are over. They rejoice in the common salvation and in the fellowship of their brethren. The tribes from which these Christians come once fought each other to bitter death, but Christ has broken down the middle wall of enmity which divided them, and they feel more at home with fellow Christians, although of different tribes, than they do with unbelievers of their own ethnic group. Among preachers assembled at this Saturday afternoon gathering are Sotos from the mountain kingdom of Lesotho, soft-spoken Swazis, black-bearded Xhosas, and Zulus who were once, under their war chief Chaka, the scourge of southern Africa. They still fight, but their sword now is the word of God, and the trophies of battle will adorn the halls of eternity. One of the finest congregations among the Bantu of South Africa is at Attridgeville in Pretoria. We see moving about among the brethren after services a white-haired old soldier of the cross, Brother John Manape. Among the illustrious names of those servants of God of all ages who served the generation in which they lived, surely the name of John Manape will be written on heaven's honor roll. He learned to read Greek after he was 70, partly that he might know more fully God's revelation to man, and partly to encourage younger men to train themselves to take up the mantle of service when God lifts it from Brother John's weary shoulders. These brethren are mainly Soto, and they have, like the Thessalonians, so sounded out the word of the Lord that in every place their faith to Godward is spread abroad. This congregation supports 2 evangelists, one a missionary sent back to their own homeland. The church in Pretoria was the second white congregation established in South Africa, and was the fruit of the labors of Brother Don Gardner and the late Martel Petty. From this congregation have gone forth no fewer than 7 gospel preachers. Among the evangelists who have labored with them in later years is Brother John Harden, who has preached longer in the Republic of South Africa than any other full-time minister of the gospel. For the past 2 years, the Pretoria brethren have carried on the work alone, without the help of a regular preacher. But they look forward with joy to the time when Bob Cannon family of Inglewood, California, will arrive to work with them. The city of Pretoria is South Africa's stately capital. From these imposing union buildings, the most stable country on the African continent is governed. Like Johannesburg, Pretoria is located in the province called the Transvaal. Unlike cosmopolitan Johannesburg and predominantly English Durban, Pretoria is largely a South African Dutch or Afrikaans city. And yet, in a larger sense, it is the heart of South Africa, of all tongues and races. Rising high above the great apartment buildings and offices of the capital city, its solid granite epitomizing the strength of the nation for which it stands, the Voortrekker Monument stands proudly against the blue Transvaal sky. This is the shrine of South African liberty, dedicated to those intrepid pioneers who braved an unknown and savage wilderness to found a nation where their children might breathe the pure air of freedom. It symbolizes the struggle of a poor and lonely remnant of Europe's unwanted children who fought to make a home beneath the Southern Cross. From out of the crucible of suffering, hunger and death was forged the Boer Republic, a country where the victims of an old world's crowded poverty and oppression have sought and obtained a haven of refuge, free to work and love, to worship and dream and hope. Day by day, the children of the Southern Cross are slipping into eternity's boundless sea. The peoples of Africa have a rendezvous with judgment upon some as yet unseen celestial shore. Whether they meet it alone or under the shadow of the blood-stained cross, only you can answer.